Sigma has arrived in Season 17 of Overwatch 2 Stadium. So you know what that means? We've got to get a build together for him, and I think we've got a really fun one here. Hey everyone, this is Connor here at the Game House, here today with my first build guide for Sigma. Really excited to get into this and all the other new heroes. Going to start working on these as soon as I can to get these out. But let's take a look at what we've got here for Sigma. Also, if you want to try this build, I've not only got an article on the website that kind of breaks it down a little bit more, but here is the build code, the share code. And as you can see, I'm calling this build Almighty Orbit. And the idea of this build is we're going to use the two abilities that give him the orbiting things around him. Because honestly, I don't know that these are going to be the strongest, but they certainly seem like the coolest and the most fun. So I wanted to try and make a build around them. This is also my first time using the new build maker, so apologies that it's not fully filled out, but I think these are kind of the core items, quote unquote, I would say. So let's kind of get into the idea of the build and talk through it. So as we have here the order of abilities, or powers rather, this is Orbital Barrier first. This gives us a mini experimental barrier that orbits around us and has 50% reduced health. So once you have that up, you'll have this fun little orbiting shield here. I like to start with this, honestly, because round 1 powers a lot of times feel underwhelming anyway. You're not going to feel a ton of value out of them, so I thought just some passive healing and some extra barrier would be pretty cool. Also just shows you how small this barrier is. It doesn't even go up to his head level, but still, just some extra, release from poke damage, or if a Reaper is trying to flank you, this is something that could easily provide some great value there. And then in the early game, these are kind of the 3 items I would look for. Kind of between rounds 1 and 3, I would look to get Containment Fields. This is going to give you cooldown reduction, which is a huge part of the build. We're trying to get our cooldowns as low as possible. Also gives you some Kinetic Grasp duration, which we're going to get into a little bit later. And then this one, Synced Shielding. While behind Experimental Barrier, gain 5% weapon power and attack speed, while in front of Experimental Barrier, gain 10% move speed and weapon lifesteal. I believe this would proc with this shield, with this Experimental Barrier being up. It is up, so this should give you a constant ability to use it. Whether you are in front of it or behind it, I believe that would be how it would work. It's hard to be able to confirm that in the practice range here, but that should be something that synergizes pretty well. And then this Ironclad Exhaust Ports as well. 5% cooldown reduction, and when you use an ability, you gave 25 overhealth for 3 seconds. These 3 are all going to work together really nice for this 13,500 cost early game, and should get you through the first three rounds before we get into some late game items. That should get us into our round 3 power here. This is going to be Philharmonic Fortitude. This is Experimental Barrier, has 25% increased max health. Barrier health regenerates constantly, but 50% slower while deployed. The constant regeneration is really big here for us. The whole point of this build is to be able to be constantly shielding, constantly cycling cooldowns, staying in fights as long as we can. I feel like this really is going to work for Sigma, because otherwise, I think if Sigma tries to poke too much in Stadium, it's just going to be hard for him to find value. So this allows him to brawl, stay in, stay healthy, keep the team healthy, and should give you some pretty crazy damage mitigation numbers, I would think. So Philharmonic Fortitude is going to be our round 3. And that kind of gets us into the late game and flex slots that I'll talk about here before we get into these last 2 abilities. This one right here, Decupier's Thesis, I'm going to try and pronounce that. 50 shields and Experimental Barrier heals nearby allies for 3% of your max life every 1 second. So this, in sync with this and this, you should be healing allies almost the entire game with your max health. And this is going to be something we look to even stack more and more. So let's just sell these to start looking at more late game focus here. So we'll have this. We have now Martian Mender, 25 health, 10% cooldown reduction, and restore 3% of your life every 1 second. More in line with the build, more health, more cooldown reduction, exactly what we're trying to do. This one right here, I'm not going to try and pronounce it. When you take damage, gain 5.5% damage reduction for 1 second, stacking up to 20 times. So more health, more damage resist. And then Antimatter here, this is going to be, if you want to go for a little bit of late game weapon power, especially when we get to round 7, when we're using hyperspheres, this can be a great way to go. However, if you're already here and you're at 45,000, you're feeling pretty good, you have a lot of max health, and you want to kind of keep the health train going, There are some flex slots I have for that here. In particular, the harness, 25% ability power, and accretion explosion radius. If you're feeling like your accretion is getting a lot of value, you could go for that instead, maybe in addition to for some extra damage. We have beam splitter. If you're running into a Zarya, this could be a really nice tool. While kinetic grasp is active, reduce incoming beam damage by 50%. And then this one, same thing. If you're being basically debuffed or affected by stun, sleep, or hinder frequently, this decreasing of negative effect duration by 40% can be really nice. These are just kind of optional flex slots based on how you feel like you're playing with this. But that kind of closes out the items that I've recommended. There's still plenty of other ones you could look at, especially in the survival tab. If you're kind of curious what to go for, because we're doing a lot with max health, anything like this could be good. This 15% health armor shields, anything like that could be valuable for the build. But let's look at these last two powers next. This is our round 5 power. Is damage absorbed by kinetic grasp, also restores experimental barrier's health. Excess is converted to over health. So this is just more ways for us to soak in damage, keep our shields up, stay alive longer in fights, maybe get some over health in the process. And then our last one, kind of completing the almighty orbit idea here, is when you use an ability, create 2 hyperspheres around you. They explode on contact, but deal 50% reduced damage. This is really where I look to combine antimatter, because we're going to be, with our reduced cooldown that we're getting as low as we can. Let's say we had these 2 items left. So we have 25% reduced cooldown, 940 health. This is a pretty good example of like what a final build could look like on this. At least in my mind, this is kind of how I would look to play it. You're going to get value out of the hyperspheres orbiting around you. Antimatter helps with that. Also helps to give them extra explosion radius. And then the rest of the build is focused on let's use our abilities as much as possible to create those hyperspheres, keep barrier up, more barrier here, and then give kinetic grasp some value. So all in all, like I say here, we're going for constant uptime of experimental barrier, maximum value out of your orbiting items, your orbiting spheres and shields, and just trying to stay in and be as brawly as possible. If you find yourself kind of having trouble sustaining, again, opt for maybe some more survival items. You could potentially switch around the power order a little bit, and maybe instead of going for this orbiting right here, we could look to go for another shield item or something to give us maybe some more survivability. Maybe this kinetic grasp, symphonic syzygy, yeah, could give you some more damage as well from kinetic grasp, because we are going to use that here. But that is all. That is the build, Almighty Orbit from the Game House. Let me know what you all think in the comments of this build. If you want to try it out, be sure to let me know how that goes. And from our house to yours, we hope you'll join us next time for another Overwatch 2 build guide. We'll have Zenyatta and Junkrat coming shortly, so make sure and stay tuned. We'll see you then.